Look at this image. A golden retriever puppy gently touching a snake with shiny black scales with its paw. The dog's tongue almost touching the reptile. It seems impossible, doesn't it? Most people would run away at the sight of this scene. But what you are about to discover goes beyond any logic. This is not just a strange photograph. It is a record of something that defies everything we know about nature. 2 years after this moment was captured, something absolutely shocking happened between these two animals that would change everything. Get ready, because this story will make you question what loyalty really means.
It all began on an isolated farm in South Africa, where Marley, a 3-month-old golden retriever puppy, was exploring the property for the first time. The morning sun illuminated the dry fields when something caught his attention near a pile of stones. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible movement. Marley approached with the typical puppy curiosity, without fear, without suspicion. And that's when he saw it. A baby snake, with scales as black as night, was coiled among the rocks. But something was wrong. The little snake was injured, with visible marks on its delicate body. Most animals would have immediately moved away. Their natural instinct would be to avoid danger. But Marley wasn't like most. He sat there, watching the fragile creature that trembled slightly. The baby snake didn't have the strength to attack or flee. It was abandoned, vulnerable, at the mercy of larger predators. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Marley didn't see a threat. He saw another living being that needed help. The pup began sniffing around, searching for something. He found a small puddle of rainwater that had fallen the night before. Carefully, Marley returned to the snake and, using his snout, gently pushed a few drops of water towards it. The snake instinctively drank. It was the first of many gestures that would build an impossible connection between two species that should never have met in this way.
The following days revealed a disturbing truth. The region was facing one of the worst droughts in decades. The farm, which once had small streams and abundant vegetation, was now a scene of cracked earth and suffocating heat. The baby snake, a black mamba in its first days of life, had been rejected by its own nest. Among snakes, the weakest offspring are often abandoned, left behind while the stronger ones continue with the group. She was alone, without protection, without food, without water. Her chances of survival were virtually nil. But something unexpected was happening. Marley returned to that pile of rocks every day. He carried water in his snout, wetting his fur and letting drops trickle down near the snake. When he found small insects or dead lizards, he brought them there, allowing the snake to feed. Marley's owner, a retired veterinarian named Thomas, watched everything from afar with a mixture of fascination and concern. He knew that black mambas are among the most lethal snakes in the world. A single attack could kill Marley in a matter of hours. Thomas almost intervened several times. He almost separated the two. But something stopped him. It was the way the snake reacted to Marley's presence. There was no aggression. There was no fear. There was only a silent acceptance, as if that little snake understood that the furry puppy was its only chance of survival. And Marley, with his canine innocence, saw no venom or danger. He saw only a friend who needed him. Day after day, this routine repeated itself, strengthening a bond that defied all the laws of nature.
3 months had passed. The snake had grown considerably, its black scales now gleaming healthily under the African sun. It measured almost a meter in length, still young but already displaying the deadly elegance characteristic of its species. Marley had also grown, his legs now larger, his golden fur denser. But the connection between them remained intact. Every morning the same ritual. Marley would descend to the rocks, and the snake would emerge from its hiding place. They would spend hours together, a scenario that any wildlife expert would consider utterly impossible.
Thomas documented everything in his journal. As a researcher, he knew he was witnessing something extraordinary. Black mambas don't form bonds. They are solitary creatures, programmed only to hunt and survive. There are no scientific records of snakes developing any kind of emotional connection, much less with a natural predator like a dog. But there was the proof before his eyes. The snake recognized Marley. When the golden retriever approached, it would slightly raise its head, a behavior Thomas had never seen in decades of experience. It was almost as if it were greeting him. But reality was about to change everything. Thomas received devastating news. The farm was going to be sold. He would have to return to the city, more than 400 kilometers away. And Marley would have to go with him. There was no choice. The moving date was set, and Thomas watched his dog play with the snake, knowing that soon this impossible friendship would come to an end. He had no idea that this forced separation would only be the beginning of something even more unbelievable.
The day of departure arrived like a silent storm. Thomas loaded the last boxes into the vehicle, while Marley ran frantically between the house and the pile of stones. The dog knew something was wrong. His instincts sensed the change in the air, the tension, the finality of that moment. He went to the snake one last time. The serpent was coiled in its usual place, and when Marley approached, it raised its head differently. It wasn't a greeting. It was something deeper, almost melancholic. The two remained there for long minutes, motionless, as if sharing a silent understanding. Thomas had to carry Marley to the car. The dog resisted, whimpering, looking back as they drove away. Through the rear window, he saw the snake slither from the rocks and stop at the edge of the dirt road, watching the vehicle disappear in the dust. It was a scene Thomas would never forget. A black mamba, one of Africa's most feared creatures, standing there as if bidding farewell to a friend. In the following days, Marley refused food. He spent hours lying near the door, waiting, searching for something that was no longer there. City life was a difficult adjustment for both of them. Thomas lived in a small house with a fenced yard. Marley had room to run, but something had changed in him. The sparkle in his eyes had faded. He didn't play like he used to. 6 months passed, then a year, then 2 full years. Marley became a strong, healthy adult dog, but Thomas could see that a part of him never left that farm. And then, on an ordinary afternoon, something extraordinary happened. Thomas decided to revisit the old property. He didn't know that this decision would change everything.
The return trip took all day. When they arrived at the farm in the late afternoon, the place was unrecognizable. The new family that had bought the property had renovated the main house, but the surrounding fields remained virtually untouched. Thomas opened the car door, and what happened next left him speechless. Marley jumped out of the vehicle and began to run. It wasn't a random run. It was a purposeful run, with direction. The puppy headed straight for the old pile of stones, as if a map were etched into his memory. His steps were quick, desperate, full of an energy Thomas hadn't seen in years. When Marley arrived at the spot, he began sniffing intensely, circling the area, searching. Thomas followed closely, his heart pounding. Obviously, the snake wouldn't be there anymore. 2 years was an eternity in the wild. It had probably migrated miles away, or worse, could have been killed by predators or hunters. Thomas was about to call Marley back when he saw something that made him freeze. From the cracks between the rocks, a dark, elegant shape began to emerge. Black scales that gleamed like obsidian in the setting sun. A distinctive triangular head. The snake was over 2 meters long now, fully grown, an adult black mamba in all its lethal splendor. What happened next defied everything Thomas knew about animal behavior. The snake didn't attack. It didn't coil up defensively. It didn't open its mouth, revealing the black interior that gave its species its name. Instead, it slowly slithered toward Marley. The dog stood completely still, its tail still, its eyes fixed. And then the snake did something no herpetologist would believe without seeing it. It raised the front part of its body and lightly touched Marley's snout with its head. It was a brief, delicate, impossible touch. Thomas held his breath, tears welling in his eyes. It had remembered. After 2 years, the snake had remembered the puppy that saved its life. Thomas decided to extend his visit for a few days, staying at a nearby inn. He needed to understand what was happening. Every morning, Marley ran to the rocks, and every morning the snake appeared. They spent hours together, just as they had years before. But there was something different in the air. Thomas could feel it. The region had changed. New dangers had arisen. Poachers frequented the area in search of animals for the illegal market. Traps were common on the forest trails, and that was exactly what almost cost Marley his life. On the 3rd day of the visit, Thomas let Marley explore a nearby trail while he organized the photographic equipment. It was an area he considered safe, surrounded by dense trees and near a small river. Marley loved that place, running among the shadows, sniffing every fallen log. But he didn't see the trap. It was a deep pit, disguised with branches and dry leaves, designed to capture medium-sized animals. When Marley stepped onto the flimsy cover, everything collapsed. He plummeted 3 meters down, landing with an impact that expelled the air from his lungs. The pit was damp, dark, and the walls were too smooth to climb. Marley tried to jump, scratch, climb in every way possible, but he was trapped. He began to bark desperately, but Thomas was too far away to hear. The hours dragged on. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the forest. And it was then that Marley realized he wasn't alone. Something was moving in the dark corner of the den. A pattern of different scales, vivid colors of red, yellow, and black. A coral snake, small but deadly, and it was slowly approaching, its forked tongue testing the air, detecting the warmth of the trapped and defenseless dog.
Panic gripped Marley. He cowered against the opposite wall of the pit, trying to get as far away as possible from the advancing coral snake. His eyes were wide, his body trembling. The coral snake was in no hurry. It moved with the confidence of a predator that knows its prey has nowhere to go. Every inch it advanced seemed like an eternity. Marley could see its fangs, small but laden with neurotoxic venom potent enough to paralyze an animal 3 times its size. Death was just seconds away. And then something impossible happened. A swift, fluid movement descended the wall of the pit, black scales gleaming in the little light that remained. The black mamba had found Marley. How it knew where he was a mystery, but there it was, slithering into the trap with astonishing speed. The coral snake sensed its presence immediately and turned, but it was too late. The black mamba intercepted its path, placing itself between Marley and the threat. What followed was a silent but intense confrontation. The 2 snakes rose, heads raised, bodies tense. The coral snake hissed, displaying its warning colors. But the black mamba was bigger, faster, more lethal. The attack was precise and devastating. The black mamba struck with a speed the human eye could barely follow. Its fangs found the coral snake's body at a vital point. The coral snake tried to fight back, writhing in a desperate counterattack, but the mamba was relentless. In less than a minute, it was over. The coral snake stopped moving, its venom useless against a predator from its own world. The black mamba slithered back, positioning itself beside Marley. The dog was trembling, but something extraordinary happened. He pressed his snout against the snake's body, a gesture of pure, instinctive gratitude. She had saved his life just as he had saved hers 2 years ago.
Night fell over the forest, and the darkness in the cave became absolute. Marley was exhausted, injured from the fall, frightened and confused. But he wasn't alone. The black mamba remained by his side throughout that endless night. It coiled close to him, not as a threat, but as a protective presence. Every time Marley moved or groaned in pain, the snake adjusted its position, remaining close. It was behavior that contradicted everything known about reptiles. They don't protect. They don't keep company. But there, in that dark and damp cave, that was exactly what was happening. Meanwhile, Thomas was desperate. When he realized Marley hadn't returned, he grabbed his flashlight and went shouting the dog's name through the forest. His voice echoed among the trees, but there was no answer. He searched for hours, his heart racing, imagining the worst scenarios. Jaguars, hyenas, venomous snakes, hunters' traps. Any of these dangers could have found Marley. The night dragged on in agony. Thomas barely slept, and at the first sign of dawn, he resumed the search with even more intensity. That's when he heard a faint bark coming from a denser area of the forest. Thomas ran toward the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. When he found the pit and peered inside, the scene he saw left him speechless. Marley was at the bottom, dirty and clearly shaken, but alive. And curled up beside him, its black scales reflecting the morning light, was the black mamba. Thomas immediately understood what had happened. He saw the lifeless body of the coral snake in the corner of the pit. He saw the protective posture of the black mamba. And he saw in Marley's eyes something that can only be described as profound gratitude. Thomas carefully descended into the pit using a rope. The black mamba didn't move. It watched as he placed Marley safely, and only then did it slither along the walls and disappear into the vegetation, like a silent guardian returning to the shadows.
Marley fully recovered from his injuries in a few weeks. Thomas took him back to the city, but this time the farewell was different. He knew that the connection between Marley and the snake was something that transcended scientific explanations. It wasn't instinct. It wasn't conditioning. It was something deeper, purer. It was loyalty in its most essential form. 2 years of separation hadn't erased the memory. The distance hadn't weakened the bond. And when the critical moment arrived, the snake remembered. She remembered the cub who shared water during the drought, who brought food when she was starving, who stayed by her side when the whole world had abandoned her. The story of Marley and the black mamba spread among the locals. Some doubted it, called it an exaggeration, a coincidence. But Thomas had the photos. He had the notes in his diary, and he had unwavering certainty that he had witnessed something extraordinary. Months later, he returned once more to the farm, and there, near the pile of stones, he saw tracks in the earth, dog paw prints and the characteristic sinuous pattern of a large snake, side by side, following the same direction. They still met. Somehow, when Thomas visited with Marley, the snake always appeared, always remembered, always repaid the kindness he received when he was just a rejected and vulnerable puppy. This story teaches us something profound about the nature of gratitude and loyalty. No matter the species, no matter the time that passes, no matter the distance that separates them, when someone saves your life, when someone offers you kindness in your darkest moment, that mark remains forever etched in your memory. Marley saved a snake that everyone would consider a natural enemy, and that snake reciprocated by saving him when he needed it most. Two animals that shouldn't even coexist peacefully proved that compassion knows no bounds, and that sometimes the most unlikely bonds are also the strongest. If you enjoyed this story, please like it. Subscribe to the channel to help me bring you more stories, and turn on notifications. Comment on what you thought and leave tips and suggestions in the comments. There are many more incredible stories waiting for you here on the channel, each one more surprising than the last. Keep watching and discover more impossible connections that will make you rethink everything about the animal kingdom.